Godot 3.1 brought an amazing improvement to the scripting workflow, which is the ability to optionally use static typing. So as I said, it's optional, so you are not enforced to use static typing, and you are also not enforced to use only one of the two when you are scripting. So you can use static typing for a part of your script and dynamic typing for another part. But as a good practice, if you are using dynamic typing, you should stick to it, and if you are using static typing, you should stick to that style. So let's go to the script workspace here, script, and I've prepared two versions of the same script, so both achieve the same thing, but one of them is dynamic typed and the other one is static typed. If you don't understand what's happening in this script, I recommend you to watch GDQuest video introducing GDScript and programming in general. So you can search for GDQuest introduction video on GDScript, and when you finish it, you can come back here so you can understand what are the differences between static typing and dynamic typing in GDScript, okay? With that said, let's start reviewing the features. You can see that this title variable is pointing to a node, and if you go back here to the scene, it's pointing to this label node here, the title label node. But if we check the implementation of this setTitle and getTitle methods here, you can see that what we are actually doing is setting the text and returning the text property of this label node that this variable is pointing to here. So we are accepting a string value and we are returning a string value. This is only possible due to the fact that in dynamic typing, we can change the type of the content of a variable quite trivially. So we are using this feature of the dynamic typing to make this title variable here quite like a shortcut to the text property of this label node here. So let's go to the static version of this script. And the first thing that I'd like to bring your attention to are the number of the lines. So if you go back to the dynamic script here, you can see that all lines are grayed out. This means that these lines are not safe. So Godot's compiler doesn't guarantee to you that these lines are safe to work with in runtime. But if you go back to the static typed version, we can see that most of the lines here are greened out, meaning that Godot is ensuring to you that these lines are safe to work with. These are safe lines. And with static typing, what you are trying to achieve is these safe lines by giving Godot's compiler information about what you are trying to achieve, and the compiler will tell you if this is safe to work with, so if your approach is safe or not. And if it's safe, you will have these green safe lines here, and if it's not, you will have these gray lines here, so unsafe lines. So let's see what are the features that you can use to achieve these safe lines. The first thing that you notice is that now I have two extra private variables, and they are what is pointing to the label nodes. This is because in static typing, I can do what I did in the dynamic typing. So I can have a label node and pass strings to that variable. So I had to separate what is the label and what is the actual text. So if I go here in the title variable, you can see that this is the actual variable that is actually pointing to the text property. So this is what accepts a string as a value, and it's using the set and get title methods to encapsulate this value. The way that you can enforce that a variable will only store one type of value is by giving a type hint after the variable declaration. So I have here the title, and it will only store strings here. To do that, you can use colon, and after the colon, you pass the type that will be stored in this variable. Currently, you can use any Godot building type. So if you go here in help, search help, you can see that we have a lot of types to work with, and we have nodes as well. So nodes are types as well. So here you can see that I have a label type and a string type. And you can also pass custom types by using the class name keyword. But these class name features go beyond the scope of this video. So if you want to know more about it, go check out a video dedicated to the class name keyword, the new feature. Note that you can also ask Godot to infer the type of a variable based on a return type of a method. So down here I have a twin and a type variable, and I'm asking Godot through this token here, so the colon followed by the equal sign. And note that this is not a single token. So if you separate these signs here, it will also work. So this is just a guideline that we follow. So we keep this column and the equal sign together. And Godot will try to infer a type for this variable based on what it's getting from a method. So if you don't know about that, the $sign is actually a shortcut for get node. And the get node function, the get node method, always return a node. So in this line, Godot will infer that this twin variable will be of type node. And note that one of the features that the static typing provides to us is the ability to define the return type of our custom functions, so the methods that we define by ourselves. So I will take rid of this, and let's go back to this title variable here. This title variable is of type string, and it is encapsulated into this setTitle and getTitle methods. So if you go here into this setTitle, we can see that it is accepting as an argument a value of type string. So this argument here is what will be used to inject this value into this title variable here, and it should match the type of this variable, right? And after the argument declaration of the method, you can see that we have this token here. This token is what we use to define the return type of our methods. But differently from these two tokens here, so the column followed by the equal sign, this token here is built up of two signs together. So you should use the minus greater than signs together to build up this token here. And after this token, we can define the return type of our function, of our method. So in this case, it's void. But void is not a type by itself. Void is just our way to tell the Godot compiler that this function will not return anything. So if we open this method here, we can see that there are no return statements here. So if you have any return statement on this method, so let's say that we have a return statement here, this shouldn't pass any value. This shouldn't return anything. Even if you try to return null, you have an error here telling that void functions cannot return a value. Even though at runtime, if you have just that, the value of the thing that you are assigning the returning of this method to will have the null value inside of it. On the other hand, we have here the getTitle, and we are defining that this method will return a value with the string type. So if we open here, we have return title label text property. And since we define that the title label is of type label here, Godot knows that the text property of the label type is of type string. So if we go here into the line number, we can see that Godot is telling us that this is a safe line. But on the other hand, if we try to return a type that doesn't match the type that we are setting on the function signature here, so let's say rect position, which is of type vector2, Godot will tell us that the return type vector2 doesn't match the function return type string. So it's telling us that this line won't even compile because these two values doesn't have matching types. So if I undo that, everything will be okay, and we will now have safe lines again. So this is how you can define the return type of your methods. And it doesn't matter how many return statements you have, as long as every one of them return a value that matches the function signature here. Now, I'd like to bring your attention to one of the most valuable features that the static typing provides to us. So let's go back to this setTitle method here. I will take rid of this. And let's try to achieve that again. So new title, dot, and you can see that now I have a very rich autocompletion. And this is due to the fact that I have declared that this new title variable will be of type string. So everything that is provided here into this autocompletion is inside of this string class. So if we go here, we can see that we have here begin with, bgrams, cscape, etc. If we go back to the static typing script here, we can see that this is what Godot is providing to us. So I will type here 2, and we can see that we already have here 2 lower, which is the method that I want to use here. And this is only possible due to the fact that I declared that this new title variable will be of type string. If you go here into the dynamic version of the script, we can try to achieve the same thing. So I have this new title dot, And you can see that Godot doesn't provide any autocompletion to me because Godot doesn't know what will be the type of this new title variable. So it can tell to you in a safe way what you have access into this variable. So there is no way for Godot to know what you can use in this variable. So it's up to you to know that this new title will be a string, and I know that strings have the toLower method. But this is all on my mind, this is all on my end, instead of being on the machine end, on the Godot side. But you may have noticed that when I try to get access to the text property here on this function, on the getTitle method, I didn't get autocompletion for that. So if we erase this and try to get the text property here, I don't have any autocompletion for the text property. Even though if I erase this and type dot, I have some autocompletion, but not for the text property. This is because since this script, if you go back to the scene, is not attached to any node here, Godot can get the node that is in this node path here, and therefore it can infer that this is a label. So it is presuming that it will be the returning type of the getNode function. If you go to the getNode function, we can see that it returns only node. So if we try to get autocompletion for the node class, so let's try to get child, you can see that it gives autocompletion for node type. So Godot is inferring that this is of type node because this is all the information it has regarding this value here. How we can change that? How we can tell Godot that the return of this function is actually of type label? How we can make this? Well, we can use the feature called casting. Casting is the ability to convert a type to another compatible type. So in our case, we can convert a node to a label, for instance, because they are on the same hierarchy. This, though, is not always possible. If I try to cast this return type to anything that is outside of its hierarchy, so if I try to cast this as a string, for instance, so to cast, use the as keyword. So I'm casting this return type as a string. We'll get an error, and Godot is telling us that this is an invalid cast. It cannot convert a node to a string. So this is impossible to do. On the other hand, if we try to cast this as a label, everything will be okay. And if I go down here to the get title again and try to have autocompletion for that, dot text, we now have autocompletion for everything that is inside the label type. So if I try to get access to, let's say, the rect position, we have that again. And this is how you can make a casting. This is not always possible though. So if Godot cannot cast a node to another subtype of a node, so if the returning of this method is not compatible with what you are trying to cast, the value of this variable will be null. So one way you can test if the cast was successful is by checking if there is nothing inside the title variable. We will return a simple string here. So if the cast was successful, we will try to return the text of this title label. Otherwise, we will return an empty string. And notice that due to the fact that Godot can guarantee to you that this description label will be actually of the type label, this line is unsafe. On the other hand, you can see that the title label is a safe line. So we can make this a safe line by asking Godot to make a cast from this value here to convert it to a label, and now we have a safe line here. Another nice improvement that Godot 3.1 brought to the scripting workflow is that now Godot will provide warnings regarding your script. If we go down here on the bottom right of the scripting workspace, we have this warning sign here, and if I click it, we'll see that we have two warnings. So the title and the description variables are declared but never used in this script. Now allow me to fold this and open this show function here. And you can see that we have some unsafe lines here. This is because the tween and the timer variables are currently being considered nodes. So I will cast them as tween and timer. And you can see that now we have all the lines safe, but we also have more warnings. So the more information you provide to the Godot compiler, the more information it gives you back. So we can see that now we have more warnings, 6 at the total. And a cool thing about these warnings here is that if I click on one of them, Godot will bring me to the line that this warning is concerned. So if I click here on this line 36, You can see that now my cursor is on the line 36 and Godot is highlighting this line. Although it's good to have these warnings and these insights about our code, we can also trigger them off by just clicking here on ignore, and Godot will add a comment line telling that this line is supposed to be ignored by the warning system. So if I ignore here, you can see that it adds a new line on the script ignoring the return value discarded warning. So if you click ignoring these warnings here, Godot will add these comments here ignoring these warnings, but this is not very usable, right? You can just click on every warning that you want to discard. I will undo this warning ignore lines, so I will undo everything here. And if you go to the project settings, you can see that now under the debug category, we have the GDScript property, and we have some properties that we can turn on and off. So if you don't want a specific type of warning to be triggered by this warning system, you can turn this off here. And if you don't want any warnings at all, you can toggle off this enable property here. So I will turn it off, close. If I update the script, you can see that we don't have any warnings anymore. So I will undo this. I will turn on the warnings again, and I will update the script. And there we have the warnings back. And you also have the option, if you want to be very strict with your code, you also have the option to turn these warnings, which currently they won't prevent your application from running. So if we test this, I will open the scene here. We can properly test the scene, so you can see that it runs. But you can turn these warnings into errors. And what this will do is that it will prevent your game from running if you don't fix these warnings. So I will go here into the project settings, and I will turn on this treat warnings as errors property here. And if I try to run this scene again, you can see that now Godot provide me an error. And you can see that we have an error here that says that the local variable achievement is declared but never used in the block. So this is an error from another script, but since the treatment of warnings as errors is project-wide, this will prevent me from running any script that has a warning or now an error. So these are some of the improvements to the scripting workflow. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time.